One of the things I teach in my online mentorship is how to build up your resume. But if you're just looking for the basics, I want to make sure you don't have to pay me just to understand the basics. Come see me when you're ready to take it up to like a 9 or a 10, but you may just need some basic understanding of how to build up a resume, and you shouldn't have to pay for that. So let me dive right into one of the most important pieces for you to understand about your resume, and that is you have a very short amount of attention span to get people who are reading it interested. And the first person who's going to read it is a recruiter or somebody in HR, somebody who's doing some screening. More times than not, they have very little understanding of what it is that you do. And so you need to grab their interest in that first line because as a result of them not really understanding what it is that you do, they're not reading your resume very carefully. You get about 15 seconds of time. So that first line, first 2 or 3 lines is critical because recruiters will read through most of that line. And then you have this wedge of decreasing attention to each line going forward. In many cases, they don't even read the entire line. They'll just scan for main points. Sometimes they're just looking for skills and college degree, and you're not going to stand out if you don't have a really impressive first, second, and third line that's going to grab their attention. Now, how do you do that? Well, I'm going to show you based on my profile exactly how I grab people's attention. And you got to think about it. The people that are coming to me have no greater attention span than recruiters. In more cases than not, they're looking through a ton of different people to figure out who am I going to bring in to solve my business problem. So that's what I'm aimed at. So first line is, who am I and what are my roles? What is it that I can do? And in a lot of cases, this is important for you to just slam in that first line. But you don't say it like I'm a data scientist or I'm a this or I'm a that because that's fairly vague. For me, I'm extremely specific. What do I say? Machine learning plus AI strategist. Very few people are that. And so it's important for me to put that in the first line because most people don't have both that technical and strategic background slammed together. Plus, I'm an educator. If you're coming to my profile, I need you to understand I teach. I'm an educator. I'm setting you up to buy something from me. And you're doing the same thing in your resume. You're setting up a recruiter or a hiring manager to buy something from you, which is your services to come in and hire you. And so I'm telling you immediately, here are the 2 things that you could buy my time to do. Now that third thing, it begins my source of authority. And this is very, very important. Who am I also has to begin to address what is my source of authority? Why should you hire me over someone else? And I talk about this a lot in my workshops and classes, competitive advantage. You want to immediately establish yourself as credible. And that means that you have to have sources of authority, but also a competitive advantage over other people. And what's my competitive advantage and globally recognized expert in data science? You're probably not going to have something like that, but it's okay. Hit in that first line with who you are, what roles, what should you be hired for, and then begin to talk about your competitive advantage. And if you can slam that all into one line, unreal. You may not have globally recognized expert in data science, and that's okay. But there's something about you that's special, that is really unique, that sets you apart from most people. Look at your resume, maybe look at 10 or 20 other resumes of people similar to you. See what they have. Is there something about you that makes you stand out? And a lot of times it's something that's not even on your resume yet. And thinking about yourself that way, not just what makes me fit in, what makes me fit the mold that everyone's looking for, but what makes me go one step past that? What makes you that much better than everyone else or creates part of your unique value proposition? That's going to set you apart. And this is also important when you look at your career, when you look at your education, when you look at all of the things you're doing to get hired, think about incorporating competitive advantages. Basically look for experience, look for classes, look for the intersection of skills or unique experience that you have that makes you stand out, that gives you an advantage over all the other candidates that may be applying for a job. And put that into your first line. Now, second line, I talked about sources of authority. What are my sources of authority? And they'll be similar to yours, although the lines are going to be a little bit different. Your sources of authority are coming from similar categories that mine do. First one's experience. This one's, a lot of people have experience, and so experience is a common source of authority. You trust me because I've been doing this forever. I think it's a little flimsy, but I pander to people who are used to experience meaning capability. So that's the first thing I say is I have over 25 years in tech and 10 in data science and machine learning. Again, competitive advantage. Very few people are as technical as I am in the strategy world, and very few people have a decade in data science and machine learning. I do. So those aren't just pieces of experience that are cool. They're also types of experience and durations of experience most people simply do not have. That's why it's my first line after that big intro. Next, client trust, company trust. If you've worked with other companies before, if you've worked with clients before, their trust is a source of authority. The fact that they hired you is meaningful. And sometimes you may have a cool company name on your resume. And think about that. If you've got a great company, a company that's well respected, well known, put it in there at the very beginning. It's a source of credibility. Don't be afraid to leverage it. For me, I don't want to tie my name to a specific company because I derive my sources of authority, my expertise from me. So I don't want to diminish that by saying I now worked for this big company or that big company. So I make it more generic. I say I've built and led teams at every phase of the software development lifecycle for businesses of all sizes, Fortune 100 startups. Here's what I've done. And source of authority, why should you trust me to do this? Well, because companies of all sizes have for, again, 25 years. Source of authority justifying your particular business need and you trusting me to meet your business need. It's the same thing when you're doing a resume. It's exactly the same format as I've just laid out. Why should a company trust you and use those sources of authority to support that they should trust you to do this particular business function that you've said you can do? Now, next, awards and recognition. A lot of us have won awards and been recognized in the field, so put it out there. Since 2015, I've been recognized by everyone from LinkedIn to Analytica as a thought leader in the field. Sounds kind of conceited. I'm sorry. But it's the truth. And this is something you have to get used to, and I had to get used to this in pitching myself and in promoting myself. That's true. It sounds fantastical. It sounds almost like I'm bragging, but I kind of have to get over that imposter syndrome because that's true. I have. I've been on so many top 10 lists that if I excluded that from my profile, I'd be doing myself a disservice, even though it's kind of hard to say stuff like that about yourself, isn't it? So don't be afraid to toot your own horn and to talk about yourself not only honestly, but also completely. Talk about those things you've achieved. And a lot of times awards and recognition, we hesitate a little bit because of that inner imposter, but don't do that. Throw it out there because it supports. It's not just, hey, I think I'm awesome. It is, I have been awarded and recognized by a ton of other people. Look, I'm not the only one saying I'm cool. There are other people who do. That's a huge source of authority. So if you've had awards, recognition, any sort of external validation, throw it in there. It's huge. It's important. Revenue. I talk about this a lot in my workshops and classes. Throw numbers down. What were the outcomes? Focus on outcomes, work products outcomes. Don't worry about the skills as much because everyone has skills. Again, back to the competitive advantage. Your advantage is going to be something beyond just you can code in Python or you can do SQL or you know deep learning. Those are fairly common capabilities. Those are requirements. But in order to land a job, you have to show that you are better than the average. And the average is just this massive list of skills. So how are you more capable of creating work products that lead to results, lead to positive outcomes? And for me, I deliver machine learning-based products with ARR, annual recurring revenue, in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Again, competitive advantage because there are very few machine learning anybody's who have delivered something with a high revenue stream to the business. And so that's me setting myself apart from everyone else and talking about tangible results. You can't take that away from me. I've produced significant revenue for businesses. It's a source of my authority. Body of work is less common. If you're a PhD and if you're in probably more advanced education, higher educational background, this is going to be something that you're going to rely on in lieu of experience because you have a body of work out there. which is comprehensive and really shows how capable you are, but it's from a different perspective than you may be used to. You may be thinking of, in terms of all that other stuff that I've put out there. But if you've published, if you have patents, if you have taught, think about anything you've published, maybe even blog posts that you've published, or if you've been on the conference circuit, all of these create a body of work that someone can look at and get a better idea of who you are and what capabilities you bring to a business, even though they're not tangible years of experience type bullet points. But your body of work is, in some cases, your biggest source of authority if you've done that advanced education, or if you've kind of followed some of the stuff that I've done. I've done a lot of blog posts. I've done a whole lot of social media engagement. I've done the conference circuit, both the private sort of in-company conference circuit, as well as the more public conferences and podcasts and everything else. So hear each one of those elements and realize that's a body of work. And for me, I teach leaders to build AI first business models. It's something that I've done. It's something that I speak a ton on in all of these publicly available body of work items that you can Google and find from me. I help businesses evangelize their products by positioning them as credible, innovative solutions to complex business and technical challenges. That's not only a service I provide, but if you Google me, you will find examples of me doing that. And then finally, I'm teaching the next generation of AI influencers and thought leaders. It's something that I do. And it's also a source of credibility because, again, if you Google me, you see me doing that and you see that I am capable of all three of those just by looking at my body of work. Now, finally, things not to do. Avoid exposing weaknesses. I talk about this in some of my workshops, but I do is kind of a business strategy based approach, but it works really well for you as a product and you as a brand. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. It's a SWOT analysis. So 4 grids. And you look at what are your strengths, and we've talked about that. What are your weaknesses? Now, this is where maybe you have something. Like I have education, but if you look at my education compared to people I compete with, it's not that impressive. As much as I hate to say it, my education is not a strength. It is kind of a 0. It's good enough. But should I put it forward and try to pretend it's a strength? Should I try to talk it up? No, of course not. It's a weakness. Because if I sort of overinflate that, I lose credibility. If I try to seem overly confident of something that's kind of a midline achievement, again, I lose credibility. People look at me and they're distracted from the things that are really strengths. And now I've got them thinking about something that I'm not so strong on. So I don't have you noticed in none of those lines that I talk about my education at all. It's not a competitive advantage and it could be seen as a weakness. So I don't talk about it. I have very few formal publications, so you don't hear me talking about that. I have no patents, so you don't hear me talking about innovation, because there's this cadence that I've set up where I can do this, and here is a source of authority that supports my assertion of capability to you. I've said I can do this, and I've supported it by proving it with one of my sources of authority. Now, if I say I'm an innovative, I might be, and I've done some really innovative work, but I don't have any patents to support it. I would have to get fairly generalized and vague because I'm under non-disclosures. I can't talk about any other cool, innovative stuff that I've done in any sort of detailed way that I've used in the last few lines to really support my capabilities. So I don't talk about it. I'm not going to call myself an innovator because, again, it's not a strength that I can support very well, and it reveals that piece as potentially a weakness. So it doesn't matter. You may be great at something. You may be exceptional at something. However, if it doesn't have the same sort of evidentiary support as all of the other bullet points for you, or if it's really a kind of middle strength, it's not a strength, meaning you are better, you have a competitive advantage above everyone else, then you really shouldn't put it in those first few lines. It's something that you probably want to mention later on. But if it's not a strength, it may distract from your other strengths. And so that's very important to understand. Don't put everything possible in there. Put those capabilities that you can support and support them with items that are competitive advantages. So I hope that's helped. Like I said, I don't want to have to charge you for everything. So if all you needed was just some basic bullet points on how to write those first few lines of your resume, hopefully this has helped. If you need more advanced work or if you need some time with me one-on-one, definitely I've got a link in the comments. Definitely book some time with me. But I hope this has been enough to get you over the top and build out an awesome start to your resume that'll get you that first job.